Hello everyone, so this is a short video about access of RDM collections, and we concentrate on the Q collections only, so we will not consider the I or the A collections here. And this video will explain why it is important that you are aware of from where you are accessing your Q collection, your Q RDM. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Q RDMs here. And so you can access the Q RDMs from several cluster facilities at UQ, and you can also access these from your desktop and your laptop. Okay, let's put down the different cluster facilities we have. So we've got Tinaroo, we've got Flashlight, and I'm going to put it in brackets here because Banya is going to be the next cluster that will function in the same way in terms of access. We do have the Vina cluster, which can access UQ RDMs as well. We do have Delta cluster, and then we've got your general, your desktop or a laptop that sits on your desk or you've got at home. So these are the kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 major access points for a Q RDM. Now, why is it important that you are aware of where you're accessing your Q RDM from? And that is because the Q RDM infrastructure is essentially tape. And to make access easy, and it sits out at a data center, so it's actually not located at UQ itself. And so to make access possible and faster, there is basically a set of disk in between the QRDM tape infrastructure and where it's accessed from. And that is different depending on where you're coming from or where you're accessing it from. So for Tinaroo, Flashlight and Banya coming in, we've got the DRCC cache. So we call the disk that sits in between a cache. And so if you're coming from Tinaroo or the other clusters, you have to go through that cache to access your RDM. Now Vina has a different cache, so a different disk infrastructure that sits in between the RDM and the Vina cluster, and that is the QBI cache. And so if you're accessing your UQRDM, your QRDM from Vina, you're going through a different cache as if you would access it from Flashlight or Banya or Tinaroo. The same is true for Delta. We've got the IMB cache that sits in between Delta and the Q collections. And then depending on where you're sitting in your with your desktop or your laptop, there is whatever the local cache or the ITS cache, for example. So it could be anything. It could be the IMB cache, it could be the QBI cache. And so that really depends on your actual location. And so this is why it is important that depending on where you are and where you're accessing your QRDM from, you're going through a different set of disks to move your data between your QRDM and where you are, basically, or a cluster facility or your desktop and your laptop. And so if you're experiencing any problems with accessing a Q collection, a Q RDM, it is important that you talk to the right people to determine what's wrong. because the problem could be at the actual RDM infrastructure, but the problem could also be related to whatever cache you're actually trying to go through at that time. And so if you're accessing or having problems on Tinaroo, Flashlight or Banya, then the best people to contact is the RCC support. If you're having problems accessing the QRDMs from the VINA cluster, then RCC support is still a good way to go, or contact your local QBI help desk. If you're having problems accessing your QRDM from Delta, then you can still contact RCC support. We can always forward it to the IMB IT people, or you can contact the IMB IT help desk directly. If you're having problems accessing the RDM from your desktop or laptop, it really depends on where you are. So your best way or an easy way forward is to contact your local IT team and talk to them. Or you can contact the RDM support team, but be very specific about and give them all the information of where you are and from where you're trying to access the Q collection, so they can determine if they need to pull someone else in or where to look at to find out where the problem might be coming from. So a lot of people are not aware of this, but it is actually really, really important that depend where you're accessing your RDM from, and to be aware of that, specifically if you're experiencing problems, because there's different people or different entities looking after the different parts of the infrastructure, and you really need to get the right people together to actually look at all of this.